Welcome back to The Serial Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Anna Wood. Hello and welcome back to the Serial Entrepreneur podcast. Today I'm joined by Onyeka Nweze, founder and CEO of Unikorrn. We discussed her startup Unikorrn and her experience as a non-technical founder, why having experience in the risk management industry means Unikorrn solves real pain points, and her time on BBC's The Apprentice as the first tech founder in 18 years. Let's dig in. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Yes, and I'm excited to be here. Believe it or not, this is actually my first podcast, so yeah, good.
First ever? Well, I'm excited to be the first one. So, because we're called the Serial Entrepreneur podcast, we always begin with our signature icebreaker question, which is, what's your favourite breakfast cereal and why?
Oh, I have a sweet tooth, so it has to be Cocoa Pops. I feel like you can never have too many Cocoa Pops. Yeah, I love Cocoa Pops.
Yeah. Honestly, me too. Any kind of chocolate-based cereal, I'm there. It's so good. So to begin, could you tell me about yourself and tell me a bit about your background?
Yeah, so my name is Onyeka Nweze. Some people call me Oni, go by Oni. A little bit about myself. So professionally, I'm a chartered company secretary slash governance professional. And if people don't know what that is, what a company secretary does is kind of make sure that a company is abiding by all the legal principles, they're doing all the right things, and I basically ensure that the board is basically doing their job. No, it sounds a bit boring, but it's a lot more interesting. And yeah, I'm 27.
Mhm. Great. So you're also the founder of Unikorrn.
Yes.
Yeah. So what is it, or what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So Unikorrn's my little baby. So what Unikorrn is, it's a AI and blockchain powered risk management platform. Essentially, what we do is we help financially regulated businesses to mitigate risks through the use of meetings, because essentially meetings are where decisions happen. And that's kind of the best platform for businesses to discuss on how to do things better.
Yeah, great. So how did you go from your original kind of secretary background to founding this business? Like, what was the inspiration
Yeah.
behind it?
Absolutely. So I guess my role in terms of the company secretary profession, I'm always in board meetings, and I've probably sat through hundreds and thousands of board meetings. And essentially, I could always see that there was a problem within the meetings in terms of discussing risks, whether, some people in the meeting, they didn't know how to bring up certain risks. The businesses that I worked for during those meetings, they were in a position where they didn't know that a particular risk had applied to them. So risk was always a reoccurring factor. And I always found that with the businesses that I worked with, there was never a kind of robust or helpful enough system to help them kind of mitigate those risks, as well as kind of incorporate them into the meetings. And essentially, the platforms that were available at the time were just pretty much bog standard, update meetings, circulate materials. And there was never anything kind of focused on that risk management element. And, essentially, I've worked with majority of my competitors. So that's kind of my upper hand. I've worked with similar platforms for other businesses. And I just thought to myself, we can do this a little bit better. Essentially, that's how Unikorrn was born. I found that, even with the competitors that I worked for, when I tried to provide feedback on how, maybe they can improve their platform, it was always a case of, well, thank you, we'll take that on board. And I was like, no, I'm going to do this myself. And essentially, that's how Unikorrn was born.
Yeah, that's great. So just speaking about your competitors, what do you think makes you different in the market?
Absolutely. I think we definitely leverage the use of AI, blockchain. For like blockchain is one of those kind of upcoming factors that, none of the competitors are working on at the moment. And I think we are in a kind of trend where, everyone wants to know about blockchain. And essentially, we leverage the use of AI, automation, and enhanced levels of security with the use of blockchain. And, I've had some questions like, oh, what if your competitors just add blockchain? And it's a case of, our infrastructure is being built on the blockchain. So in order for competitors to do that, they'd have to strip everything back down. and start again. But unfortunately, they won't do that because it's going to cause essentially disruption within, within the client market. So they're not going to do that. So I'm in a position where, I can get in first, build it on the chain, and essentially, that's what stands us apart. And another thing as well is, we really kind of focus on that risk management element for financially regulated businesses. And some of the competitors out there, they kind of cater to more larger corporations, not for profits. And, we really kind of honed into, the SMEs and venture-backed startups, the businesses that essentially may not have a very large budget for, very expensive platforms out there. So we kind of want to be the middleman between companies that are doing this process manually or, trying to hire expensive, fintech regulatory lawyers, really trying to fill in that gap.
Yeah. And also as a small business startup yourself, kind of serving that same market means you kind of have that edge as well. You know what it's like. You know what you need to look out for.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Great. Yeah. So risk management is at the heart of your startup. How do you personally approach risk in business?
For me, there are many ways to approach risks. I think the first is an element called horizon scanning, where depending on the kind of sector that you're in, you would essentially look for any relevant laws, legislations applicable to your business and find out ways on how to apply this in order to ensure that you're kind of up to date and ahead of kind of any regulatory trends. I find that myself, because there hasn't been a platform out there that does this for you automatically, hence why we created Unikorrn. It's kind of more or less a manual process. So essentially for me, within my business, I would kind of look at relevant data, kind of all like what are those things called? Like a practical law kind of thing that basically shows you and keeps you up to date with any upcoming legislations. And then what I would do is essentially see, how does this affect my business? What are the applications that I would need to do internally to ensure, that we up to date, does not abiding by a particular risk cause any threat to the business, whether it's regulatory fines, reputational damage, how much of an impact is it actually going to make, to not kind of apply that risk to the business. So I guess there are various elements and considerations that I take into place when assessing any potential or upcoming risks for my business.
Great. So speaking with you is kind of hard to ignore the elephant in the room, which is The Apprentice. What was it like to be on The Apprentice, especially as a tech-based founder?
You know what? It was constant education. I feel like The Apprentice, over the years, it's always been your traditional pie shop, sweet shop, recruitment business. And I just came in with this governance and risk management. People are like, what are you doing? So it was kind of that constant, oh, this is what I do. It was kind of like, oh gosh, I'm going to have to repeat myself again. But it was kind of nice to kind of have that educational piece. And it was special, like first ever tech business in 18 years. Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. That's also insane. Like the first ever one in 18 years. It's hard to believe almost. Yeah. So what motivated you to apply for The Apprentice?
I think it was during the time where I kind of started to craft the business together, kind of get all my ideas paper, write my business plan. And I remember at first I was like, oh, let me just apply for The Apprentice. As an actual, I wasn't serious about it at the time. And I was just like, oh, I probably won't get on anyway. And I was like, let me just apply. Okay. I got an email and I got through the first auditions. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, you know what? I've always loved the show, so let me go for it. And then after probably like 3-4 interviews, fire rounds, they literally offered me a place. And I was like, wow, like this is insane. And I felt like, do you know what? Everything happens for a reason. And I feel like, if Lord Sugar was going to be my next business partner, if I win, if I don't win, I could actually provide that visibility for the business and put myself on a platform that would essentially help us to get to the next stage.
Yeah, definitely. Was the experience what you expected it to be?
Ah! Everything that they show you on the telly is different, but
Mhm.
in all, it was a brilliant experience. I think more of the personable things that came from the show, I think were valuable. The people that I met, all the other contestants,
Mhm.
absolutely brilliant. I've got close friends that I'm really like close to up until now. So essentially, it was a brilliant experience. I think sometimes what some of the candidates don't remember is that aside from it being a business show, it is still entertainment. So,
Yeah.
you know, I went in with the mindset like, yes, I'm gonna smash this, but then it's like you've got cameras in your face when you're under pressure, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm not used to this. So as someone who's never been on TV or kind of never imagined
Mhm.
myself to be in front of like millions of viewers, it was a complete shock. But you kind of get used to it, and you kind of embrace the environment that you're in at the same time.
Mhm. Yeah, I think whether it's something like The Apprentice or even Dragon's Den, while there is business behind it, first and foremost, it's entertainment. So people come out, even just regular reality shows, people come out and say, "Oh, they didn't edit it quite right. That's not exactly what happened."
Exactly.
But once you're on it, it's out of your hands.
Honestly, and the producers are like, we are filming. It would literally be like 3 days. So the tasks would probably take about 3, 4 days, and they will condense one task into 60 minutes. So literally, the producers are
Mhm.
like, we have hours and hours and days of filming, and we need to literally pick the highlights that make the task make sense. So apologies in
Mhm.
advance if you don't come across how you thought you come across, or we didn't include some of the things you said. It's
Mhm.
just showbiz.
Yeah, definitely. Would you recommend the experience to other people now that you've been on it?
Mm. I would say if I had been given the opportunity to participate in the show without being on TV, I'd do it
Mhm.
again. I'm just not one for cameras, but I feel as though, I guess, as a startup founder, you have to come out of your comfort zone and, embarrass yourself, make yourself look silly. It's just a part of the
Mhm.
process. So I don't know. I guess it is a great experience. 80,000 people apply and only 18
Mhm.
people get through. So, I mean, why not? If it puts your business on a pedestal and you can use that as a positive platform, then why not?
Mhm. Great. And how would you say that your life has changed since appearing on The Apprentice?
Oh, not much. How about you get papped?
Yeah.
Do you know what though? We after the show, it was a little bit weird, so I didn't go out at all. But
Mm.
we'd have like a few press viewings, like shows and stuff. And I remember we went to the studio to film, and we had like paparazzi outside that were literally like chasing us. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I can't do this. So I kind of stayed at home and like didn't really go out much. In terms of myself in the business, I guess it brought me more visibility. I got more speaking engagements, opportunities to write articles about the business. And essentially, yeah, so Unicorn went through like a startup incubation program. There was a lot more visibility about the role, and yeah, it changed for the good. I, I won't
Mhm.
I won't lie. Yeah, it was good.
Great. So what incubation program did you go through?
So I went through the Block Dojo incubation program, which is an AI and blockchain powered incubator for AI and blockchain startups.
Mhm. Great. Was it a good experience for you? It sounds like it's the perfect fit, really.
Yeah, do you know what? It was good. And I feel like every startup should kind of consider going through a process like that before going through the incubator. Unicorn was called something completely different. We had a completely different brand, and that kind of process helped us to, you know, change our identity based on the kind of customers we want to serve.
Mhm.
Things like branding colors, we had a dull logo before that wasn't really noticeable. And then through the program, we now present ourselves with this bright, you know, vibrant logo. And it's just the journey that the business has been on. I can definitely see, how far we've come. Incubation programs, they help you to kind of hone in on your idea, validate it. Is there really a problem? And is there really a
Mhm.
gap in the market for what you're trying to do? And I feel like they really kind of test and push those buttons. So definitely it was a brilliant experience.
Yeah, and it means going through something like that, you get to see if there is product market fit
Exactly.
before you've even properly launched, before you've committed so much time and money into something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's kind of a good like a test phase for the business. And I feel like every
Mhm.
startup should go through one if they can.
Yeah, great. So, kind of looking at your startup journey so far, what would you say have been the challenges that you faced and how have you managed to overcome them?
Sure. Well, I guess I'll address the elephant in the room, which is, of course, funding, something
Mhm.
that all startups essentially struggle with. So we are kind of still in that pre-seed stage, but coming through the incubator, we did receive investment from the incubator and we're kind of connected with investors, VC. So conversations are still ongoing, but as a underrepresented female within the tech space, the
Mhm.
figures don't lie. There will always kind of be that barrier to entry for us, essentially. 0.0%, 0.01% kind of goes to underrepresented female founders. So
Mhm.
I guess it's that barrier that I guess everyone's trying to change. So hopeful and championing that will change. I guess another thing for Unicorn was, I guess, kind of building our product. So in terms of startup founders, I'm non-technical, and
Mhm.
sometimes you'd kind of find yourself a bit kind of overlooked because majority of the startups have technical founders and everything. But aside from not being technical, I am the brains, I am the commercial aspect of the business,
Mhm.
regardless whether, we do have someone technical in the team, Unicorn won't be a reality, without me. And I think one of the ways that I kind of addressed, the problem of being a solo founder before is, luckily, my cousin is a software developer, and I was
Mhm.
speaking to him during the incubation process. So when I went through the incubator, I was a solo founder, and I came out the incubator with two other co-founders. And it was like, oh yeah, my cousin's a software developer. He kind of helped write some code, and it was just kind of identifying the connections around me that could help, and I guess explaining the vision of where we want to go and trying to, I guess, convince people to come on that journey with you.
Mhm. Do you think going from being a solo founder to now having some co-founders with you, do you think that's kind of made it easier for you and made the journey, I don't know how to ask it. I guess
Less
made it feel a bit
stressful.
less also like less almost lonely because you hear a lot about founder loneliness of when it's just them going alone.
hmm has it changed? No. I feel like I'm still doing the hard work. And I feel
Mhm.
like, regardless of the team that I have, I still have to cover every element of the business. And yes, I'm non-technical, but I'm still reading up on
Mhm.
how to use, certain AI language models because sometimes when I have calls with investors and, my CTO can't join, I have to be able to explain those technical terms myself. So I
Mhm.
still try to learn what I need to learn in terms of like surface level basics. So, you know, whether or not my CTO is there, I can explain just as well as him. In terms of loneliness, I guess my network, other founders, I guess I have that as well.
Mhm.
So I guess it depends. And I feel like every startup is on their own journey.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you meet other founders that aren't really on your level, it can still be lonely. So yeah, I guess until you've kind of built a large enough team, you won't feel as lonely. But I guess in the early stages, that kind of solidarity will always be there.
Yeah. Great. So I guess on the flip side of that, what would you say have been some of the highlights of the journey so far?
Oh, I mean, my network, meeting people, learning new things about my business, going through our incubation program, being identified as a thought leader in my, field, being invited to speak at events, kind of creating that awareness for risk management and kind
Mhm.
of corporate governance. And, it's been a journey, but I think it's all good. The people that I've met along the way, we've got board advisors on our team now. So there's a lot of extremely good highlights. Obviously, despite the challenges, you always have to see, how your situation is positive, and how you've progressed. And I feel like one thing that maybe as a startup founder, we kind of lose visibility on is to celebrate the little wins. And it's just like, but I haven't raised, but yes, you haven't raised, but, you know, whether it's you've got an additional user or an additional tester, it's kind of being able to appreciate the little things so that you don't kind of be too hard on yourself as a founder.
Mhm.
It is a tough job. And essentially, if if it was easy, everyone would do it, but not everyone's doing it. You're doing it. So you have to be
Yeah.
able to give yourself credit for what you're trying to build and for what you're trying to create.
Yeah. I hear about that from a lot of founders about it's hard to just stop and celebrate the little wins
Yeah.
because I think as a founder, you do so many things that are really great that most people would be like, wow, look at that. But to you, it's just like, oh, yeah, that's just another day. So uh, after a certain point, it's so easy to get burnt out because you're like, oh, what have I even done? And it's like, well, look back and you see all these different things that you've managed to achieve in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, and I feel like what we do is we usually set really huge milestones, but I
Mhm.
think what we should also try to do is to set mini milestones because, for example, some startups' milestones is, close a certain round or, start turning over 500K every month. But it's like there are steps in between that you should also add as like mini milestones. And then when we don't
Mhm.
reach those huge milestones, it's like, but we've not done anything or, we failed. So I guess it's creating a culture where everything is progress, basically.
Yeah, definitely. So, looking back at your entire career so far, going from your secretarial career to being a founder now, what would you say have been some of the lessons that you've learned that have been most important on your journey?
Oh, don't be afraid to speak your mind. I think I came from an industry that was very heavily male dominated, being in a
Mhm.
boardroom full of directors and there are probably only two females in financial services to moving into another heavily male dominated industry. I think you have to speak up and you have to be brave. And, I I was in a situation when I worked in one of my previous roles was obviously in a company secretary position. And what some people don't realize, the company secretary is quite senior. And I
Mhm.
remember I was in the boardroom and one of the directors thought I was a receptionist. And he was like, "Oh, can you get me some tea?" And I was just like to him, "Oh, yeah, sure, but I'm not the receptionist. I'm here as a company secretary." So and he was like, "Oh my
Mhm.
God, I'm so sorry." So I feel like being able to kind of speak up, kind of be heard. It's just like
Mhm.
it's an industry that you have to be confident. You can't be a shy founder. People will challenge you, people will push back, and it's, how do you show your strength through? And it's like, this is every startup's business is their baby. Like, how would you defend your child? Defend your startup how you would defend your child, your niece, your cousin. Fight for it. It's okay to fight for it. And, I think never feel as though you come across too aggressive. I feel like,
Mhm.
when it's that startup world, aggression is passion. And, the right people, the right investors will not think that you're being aggressive, but rather will see, oh my God, she is passionate. She will do anything for this business. She's willing to go the extra mile. So, yeah, I guess to kind of summarize, be bold, be brave, be passionate, never be afraid to speak up, and I guess network. Networks are really good. Mingle with people around you. Don't underestimate anyone that you meet at
Mhm.
all. You will find that the people that speak a lot, that are quite flamboyant, that say I've done this, sometimes often the ones that don't help or can't help. Whereas,
Hmm.
you know, you meet people that are quite reserved and, they have a lot more connection. So yeah, I'd say don't kind of judge your network based on, how they initially present themselves, because they can definitely surprise you.
Yeah. I think it's funny. A lot of the lessons that you've mentioned have either been about being really outspoken yourself, but when it comes to other people, be like the quiet ones. That's where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it is important to, as you said, about really fighting for your own startup, because when you look at the statistics and it's something like 90%, something like that, of startups fail. So it's like the founders that are there to fight for their startup, who will just kind of shout about it, go on LinkedIn, constantly talk about why they're so great, why the startup needs to exist. I think that's a really important part of also just being really persistent with it.
Absolutely. And I think another thing that came to mind was don't be afraid to sell yourself as a
Mhm.
person. I always kind of, I've got so many achievements, I'm 27 and I feel like I've
Mhm.
definitely achieved a lot, within my 27 years of living.
Mhm.
And I feel like sometimes I kind of downplay how well I've done in life, because sometimes I don't want to come across as, maybe arrogant or pompous. But I remember I met someone, within the journey, and he was like, don't ever be afraid to sell yourself at this stage. People buy into you. So, boast about what you've achieved,
Mhm.
boast about your awards, boast about your speaking events, boast about The Apprentice. And, for me, it's hard to talk so highly of myself, because I guess people that know me do it anyway. But for me to just be in a conversation and start talking about myself, it's just something that I've never done, but I guess it's also something that I'm learning on the journey. It's, how
Mhm.
to appreciate me and also kind of see my value so that other people can see my value.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I've also heard a lot about, especially at a really early stage as a founder, that VCs often invest in the people in the team rather than the exact product, because it's at a stage where it still might pivot, things might change, but the founder behind it is always going to be there. So it's about making sure that they know exactly what they're getting into and being like, okay, I am really early stage, but in my career so far, I've achieved X, Y, and Z. I've done all this stuff, and
Mm.
I should be the person that gets your money.
Exactly.
Okay, so what do you think is next for the company and yourself? And do you have any goals for the upcoming year?
Oh, goals, goals, goals. So I guess next steps for us is we are driving hard to close around, and I
Mhm.
mean relentlessly. We want to hire our technical team. So obviously we have our CTO, but kind of have a more solid team, have, a few more devs on the team.
Mhm.
Our product right now is in the private beta stage, so kind of build it out fully and move it out publicly to kind of test within the market. And as well, look at options to expand within our other regions. So at the moment, yes, we're based in the UK, but
Mhm.
we are also looking at expanding in other regulated markets, whether Dubai, Abu Dhabi, US. And, essentially, if we can make those connections at this stage, that would be perfect, once, we expand. So, essentially, we're kind of signing up to summits in the UAE, events in the US, and kind of creating more visibility, more of a buzz around the business. So
Mhm.
that's kind of what we're focusing on within the next few months.
Great. So when do you envision an official launch of Unikorrn?
Oh, so I guess if all goes to plan, we close our round, we plan to launch our public beta on the 1st of July, which is my
Mhm.
birthday. So, so yeah, we plan to launch the public beta on the 1st of July. And what we want to do is with the B2B businesses that we onboard, we will offer a kind of premium rate to own the software or be have membership of the software, forever at a certain price. So
Mhm.
we are kind of looking at what incentives we can offer to kind of our first 100 businesses that sign up to Unikorrn. and we plan on doing a public beta for about a month or two, and official launch to the wider group public could be around September or October of this year.
Amazing. So I've come to the end of my questions. Is there anything else that you wanted to add or plug at the end of the podcast?
I mean, I could go on and on and on. Like, I can talk for ages. So I guess, yeah, I feel like also the UK market is a little bit tricky right now. I'm not really sure what's going on.
Mhm.
Obviously things like EIS, SCIS, which we have, supposedly that was supposed to make the business more attractive, but it hasn't. So I don't know what's really going on in the UK and Europe. So yeah, bit
Mhm.
confused with what's happening with the kind of startup market, but we soldier on. We will soldier on.
Yeah. Yes. I do have another question actually that I think people might want to know. Do you have any advice for other early stage founders or people looking to get onto The Apprentice?
Oh, okay. So, okay, I'll split that into two responsive.
Mhm.
So, advice for early stage founders is don't be afraid to think big. Unfortunately, the UK has a very controlled and yeah, it has a very controlled mindset. I've been told a lot that I'm ridiculous. How can you compare to businesses that are out there? And it's really, like, you can't do this. This is why you can't do this. This is why you can't do this.
Mhm.
And it has become really bad, where I feel as anyone in the UK with ambitions will be given 10 reasons why they can't do it rather than 10 reasons why they can. And I feel as though it kind of creates this kind of fear, negativity that, oh gosh, if I start a business, I'm going to fail. And I've been told that so many times, like, one of our competitors, for example, a NASDAQ. And, everyone knows NASDAQ. And it's like, how
Mhm.
can you compare with NASDAQ? I'm like, I can do it. If NASDAQ can do it, why can't I? It's
Mhm.
essentially is knowing your worth. So one advice that I'd give to startups thinking about a business and have an idea is do it. Be brave.
Mhm.
And so many people say to me, "Oh, I've had so many business ideas, but I just don't know. Like, you're so brave." I'm like, "No, I'm not brave. I'm just, you know, when you just want something so badly and it's just like, I'm just gonna step
Mhm.
out and do it." So yes, be brave, be bold. Don't let people put you off by telling you the reasons why you can't. Instead, think about the reasons why you can. The people that created NASDAQ aren't aliens. They're literally human beings. Like, we have
Mhm.
the same kind of blood. We have a heart. Everybody has the same organs. So, if they can do it, why can't you? So remember, if you want to start something, do it. If you're spoken down to or you're being discouraged from doing it and people tell you why you can't, find the reasons why you can. There is always a
Mhm.
reason why you can. So just remember that. Advice for people that want to go on The Apprentice is prepare a business plan. Make sure you have a very thorough business plan. And I would say, I feel like now they kind of know who wants to go on the show for fame, for business. So essentially, if you want to just go on TV, they will suss you out and you're not going to get
Mhm.
on. So what they want to make sure is that, yes, it's a show, but we want people that are actually serious business individuals. So I would say, go for it. It's not about fame, it's about business. And yeah, I hope that was helpful.
Yes, definitely. I also, about the first thing you said about like just go for it, because if you've got the idea, why not go for it before a couple of years down the line someone else has the idea and launches, and then you'll look back and say, "Oh, but I thought of that a couple of years ago. I could have done that." And it's like, "Yeah, but you didn't," which I think separates founders from people who are consistently thinking, "Oh, I could probably found a business. Oh, but
Mm.
it's so much risk." And it is risk, but sometimes you've got to take risks to get rewards.
Absolutely. And one thing I always say is the biggest risk you can take in life is by not taking risks, because you don't want to be in that zone where you're like, what if?
Mhm.
You want to be like, I did it and this happened. You want to have an experience based on evidence and not on presumption.
Yeah.
And what I've always wanted, I'm essentially a first generation entrepreneur, the first in my family
Mhm.
to kind of, you know, quit the job, fly out to different countries, and it's like I want to create a different culture for, my future family. I want to be able to teach my kids, you know, go for it, be bold, be brave, and, essentially everyone can make a change
Mhm.
in the world. It's not just the president, it's not just the
Yeah.
prime minister. I think anything that you're passionate about or passionate about doing, never feel as though you're too small to make
Mhm.
that change, because as I mentioned, the most famous, founders, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, they were all regular people that
Mhm.
just dreamed big, and they didn't allow anyone to dim or diminish, their light and ambition. So why can't we?
Yeah. Definitely. I do also, from what you've been saying, I have another question.
Fire on!
So, was there a particular moment in your career previously where you thought, I this is it, like I want to found a business. That's what I want to do.
I think it was after that boardroom incident that
Mhm.
happened, and I was just like, why did he immediately think I was the receptionist? What if I was the new board member? And it was just like, this is ridiculous. I want to put myself in a position, where I can run my own company, have my own board meetings and not kind of discriminate or look down on anyone or. So I think that pushed me especially. And I guess another thing was constantly trying to improve what I was using. Some of the platforms out there, they just weren't that great. And,
Mhm.
one thing for me, one thing that kind of I valued was ease of use for the directors that I was working with. We'd get a lot of complaints, oh, this isn't working, or I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And it was just like, I'm providing feedback to these software companies, and it's annoying that they can't make these changes now. I wanted to make
Mhm.
these changes now. And it's just like, oh, yeah, we'll provide it to the team. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous. Like, why can't you make these changes now? And then it was just, I just sat down. I said, everything that people complain about, in terms of the softwares I've been using, I'm going to create a super version
Mhm.
and make it my own because it's not that easy to make the changes that you need. And it's like, I've been an end user. I've seen how the end users respond to, my competitors' platforms. And it was always trying to kind of ensure that they had the best experience. Prior to corporate, my kind of career was in customer service. So, I
Mhm.
like to ensure that people have a great experience. And, it was just really irritating that, you know, something wasn't working and you just couldn't make a change straight away. And I'm just kind of that person that, every time I go into an organization or, I go into a new business and I see a change, I want to be able to make that change straight
Mhm.
away. And it's just like, I've been in industries and worked for corporations where you have to go through protocol. You have to go through procurement. You need to do this, you need to do this. And, sometimes, okay, it works, this process, and that's how things go. But I just felt like I kind of always excelled more when I worked in businesses that would allow me to change things straight away. And it was like,
Mhm.
yes, change is here, change is happening. And I just, towards, my career, I was just like, I need to do this. I just don't know
Mhm.
what, just something came over me. I was like, on it, you go, girl, you've got it.
Mhm.
You create your own diligent, you create your own NASDAQ. Why
Mhm.
not?
Yeah. I think also some of the best innovations, some of the best products come from when someone sees a real pain point in something that they're doing, something they're constantly using when it doesn't work the way they want it to. Because you know exactly what you would have wanted and what other people are probably also having an issue with.
Yeah. And you know what? You've just reminded me of something because
Mhm.
what I've seen in the industry is that companies that are trying to do what I'm doing aren't
Mhm.
company secretaries. They aren't governance professionals. They are more technical founders and they don't know what customers want. They don't
Mhm.
know the actual pain point. They don't know what the end user actually wants to see. And I remember I was doing some consultancy at some point where I had people that were trying to create what I was creating and were paying me to tell them what users should be seeing. And I think that also contributed. And it was just like, these people don't know absolutely nothing about the market. They just, they've seen
Mhm.
a trend. They know that, this is trending and they want to create it. But for me, it's not just creating a platform. I've seen how people struggle, with these kind of things. And another important thing that I remembered, is that another thing that kind of fueled me to start Unikorrn is that I was in a situation where I worked for a financially regulated business that failed because they didn't mitigate or manage any risks on time. I kind of came in late when things were already kind of falling flat. The business was liquidated. We were all laid off. I wasn't paid for 6 months. And it was kind of that emotional impact that I was like, this needs to change. And I feel like that's why we now target, financially regulated businesses, because they are the most affected, because, the financial ecosystem and the financial regulations are so tough. People get fined every day. And it's just like, if this escalates, it's not just the business that fails, but it's the stakeholders, your employees, the people who have invested, the people who depend on you. And because I was so dependent on that job at the time and it failed and there was nothing I could do, I wanted to make sure that businesses were never in a position again that they would have to let, their employees down. They'd have to let their customers down. So, it was kind of a psychological thing for me that clicked a little bit during that time too.
Yeah, great. So I think that is the end of my questions now. So before we end, is there a way that people can sign up to a wait list for your beta?
We do have a wait list on our website, www.unikorrn.io. If you go on the contact page, you can join our wait list for our public beta when that comes out. Also add our page on LinkedIn, Unikorrn, and follow me on LinkedIn as well, Onyeka Nweze. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Onyeka, for coming on the podcast today. It's been amazing speaking with you. Thank you. And hopefully we'll see you launch soon and see everything go really well.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
If you liked this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out Startup Magazine's socials to stay up to date on the latest startups news.